Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ken Reid and I am a relationship coach for gay men, helping us achieve better relationships with others, but most importantly, ourselves. For today's episode, I want to talk about dating consciously. Now, to explain what dating consciously actually means, it means being self-aware in who we're dating, understanding our type, and also making sure that we're setting boundaries and reaching a state where we're with someone who shares the same level of self-esteem as we do. Now, to explain about consciousness, just so that way it's absolutely clear what this means, this simply refers to awareness of our actions. The reason this is so important in dating is because often we do things on autopilot. We like a partner because of the way they look, because of their assets, because they have a particularly good sense of humor, they're very smart, yet we're not really aware of the patterns that we're falling into. Have you ever been in a situation where you seem to date the same kind of person? They might share a background, they might even share the same sort of style of jobs, which shares the same kind of emotional intelligence. Do you often see yourself repeating perhaps abusive patterns of behavior from past relationships? All of these things line up with the way in which we're dating. So, first off, dating consciously means having a clear understanding as to who we want in our lives. And that means having the intention of knowing what we want when we start dating. So to begin with, it's ideal to try and express yourself in terms of what you're looking for out of the dating process. And I recommend this no later than, say, the first couple of dates. The reason is that if you're a person who's perhaps, say, gone with the flow, allow the other person to lead the relationship, it can often at times go nowhere. You have to remember too that human beings inherently don't really know ourselves all that well when we're getting into the stage of figuring out what we're thinking all the time. So if you can barely register how you're thinking and feeling on a daily basis, why are you letting someone else take charge over a relationship when you haven't even set the terms and conditions for what you're looking for? And I use that phrase very specifically because a relationship does have terms and conditions. You sign up knowing that you want something and that other person has the right to want something, and you're in the process of creating something fantastic. It's not a 1 + 1 = 2, it's a 1 + 1 = 3. So being able to have a clear idea as to, say, having a monogamous relationship, an open relationship, friends with benefits, these things need to be stated explicitly from the beginning in order to establish the framework for what this is all going to be. Trust me, this is the same thing with being with family members and with being with friends. There are frameworks. For example, you don't sleep with your friends, and with lovers, you don't cheat on them. With friends with benefits, you don't try and socialize like you would with a friend or a lover. That's a framework, and it's important to have. So that's step 1. 2, do you have boundaries? And by boundaries, I mean, do you know how to stand up for yourself and say, no, I don't feel good doing this. I don't feel comfortable going to the movies. I don't really like doing this particular activity, but I'd be very happy to do something else instead. The reason it's important to be able to assert boundaries is because sometimes in an effort to like someone in order to please the person, we tend to double over and sometimes do things that make us feel very uncomfortable just by trying to get along with that person because, we think that we're doing something good for that person so they'll appreciate us. If you find yourself in a situation where you're dating someone and you already spot, preliminary red flags, like say that person has the signs that perhaps they've been cheating regularly on their partner, they've just broken out of a relationship, or they've had a situation where, you sense that things might not necessarily line up with what they have on their profile versus what they're presenting in real life. For example, the photo of them shows them very lean, and what you're presented with is someone who's definitely not lean. That's duplicity. And if you were to see that in a friend, how would you react? It's important to remember that having boundaries and being able to say, I don't feel comfortable is about protecting oneself from these sort of situations. Number 3, knowing your type. So this kind of goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning of this video, which is the concept of understanding the kinds of people that we end up falling in love with. If we've experienced a situation of being with partners who we've liked for whatever reason it may be, we may actually go back, look over them and realize, oh, these people all had low self-esteem. Or wow, I really am drawn to people who have a history of emotional neglect, which then translates to them not being emotionally available in my partnership. Oh, and yeah, I did notice that most of these people seem to withdraw, be emotionally unavailable whenever we started to get intimate. If you find that you're seeing a pattern in the past, I thoroughly recommend talking with a therapist to uncover some of perhaps the original roots of where that all came from, attachment theory, but also a way of proactively recognizing it is to observe and to even write down the kinds of qualities that your partners and people have had and how you've responded to them over the course of time that you were together, because then you'll find a link between who you know is your type and also getting a better understanding as to when you're next in a situation with another person who is your type and making a conscious decision not to date that person. So that's number 3. Number 4, self-worth. How much are you valuing yourself? This is something that we often neglect at the expense of trying to please another person, but generally speaking, I would argue that we often forget that we actually are an amazing human being. In an attempt to be modest, in an attempt to be agreeable, we often forget that we actually have a lot of talents, a lot of capabilities, and we allow ourselves to sometimes settle for less than we deserve. The reason this is dangerous is that it actually impacts the balance between yourself and another partner. If you find that you're with a partner who you see their potential and you also go out of your way to inspire, to impress them, to see their own value, that's tilting the seesaw. And what happens is that if you were starting originally here and this person perhaps was starting like this, your energy is feeding them continuously, and because they don't give back, you're putting them on a pedestal to the point where they have absolute control over how they make you feel. People with low self-esteem are a particularly good example of this. If you find yourself in a situation where perhaps the self-esteem is imbalanced at the start of the relationship, what can often happen is that the person with the high self-esteem will try everything to make the other person feel better about themselves, to work on them, to help them see themselves in a new light, to make them feel good about themselves. And the consequence can be that the person with the low self-esteem may end up finding ways to bring that person down, and that's done in order to make them feel better about themselves. That is an unhealthy relationship, and it usually starts with signs of someone being very self-deprecating at the start of a relationship, saying to you, oh, I could never do something as good as you. Oh, I'm not as good as you say in this particular area. Or conversely, the person might be incredibly over the top and overly confident, but that masks low self-esteem. And people with low self-esteem internalize their self-loathing by trying to criticize and attack you in order to make themselves feel better about themselves. So it's important to recognize that as an $1 million human being, you do not settle for an $100 human being who doesn't recognize their own value. Trust that they are on their journey. They will have to recognize their value at their own point, but right now, you don't discount. You don't settle. You're in a situation where you deserve higher than that. So that's the 4 tips that I have on dating consciously. I hope you enjoyed this video. I understand it's not necessarily specific just for gay men, but I think it's important to listen to because these are things that we forget in our dating cycle. And I hope that this helps you have better opportunities when dating to avoid dating unconsciously. Please leave this video a like and a subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I look forward to speaking with you next time. Bye bye.